Uh, Hi, everyone. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, colleagues, and friends, on behalf of AGBU Lebanon, it's my great pleasure to welcome you all to today's panel discussion, Armenia at a Turning Point, Lessons from Artsakh and the Armenian Genocide. We're honored to gather under the joint auspices of the Department of Political Studies and Public Administration at the American University of Beirut and Lepsius Haus Potsdam, two esteemed institutions whose long-standing commitment to academic rigor, historical inquiry, and human rights deeply align with AGBU's mission. This collaboration is more than a partnership. It's a testament to the shared conviction that understanding our past and present is essential for shaping a more resilient and just future. AGBU has always believed that the Armenian people's history, its triumphs, trauma, endurance, must continue to be studied, discussed, and contextualized within global scholarship. Our work is strengthened when academic institutions and research centers join us in that pursuit. Today's conversation between Dr. Ohannes Geukjian and Dr. Knocke holds particular significance. Armenia truly is at a turning point, politically, socially, and geographically. The lessons we bear from the Armenian Genocide and the recently unfolding events in Artsakh are not abstract chapters of history. They are living realities that continue to shape identity, diplomacy, regional stability, and the aspirations of Armenians worldwide. By bringing experts, scholars, students, and community members together, this event creates a vital space for reflection and analysis. It reaffirms our shared responsibility to examine the factors that have led us to this moment, and to imagine pathways to our security, justice, self-determination for Armenia and Armenians everywhere. I would like to extend our gratitude to AUB's PSPA department for its enduring partnership with AGBU, a relationship built on mutual respect, a commitment to education, and a profound belief in the power of dialogue. Likewise, we are honored to collaborate with Lepsius Haus Potsdam, an institution whose dedication to genocide studies and human rights advocacy continues the legacy of Johannes Lepsius, one of the earliest and most courageous voices documenting the Armenian Genocide. To our speakers, Dr. Geukjian and Dr. Knocke, thank you for contributing your expertise and for helping us engage deeply with urgent questions facing Armenia today. To everyone present, thank you for being part of this important conversation. Your presence is a reminder that our collective engagement matters. I wish you all a meaningful and insightful discussion.
Thank you.
Yes, Rea, thank you very much for this very kind introduction. And we decided that I would start and to get a baseline. So the origins of this event was that I got this paper Ohannes wrote on the Russians' approach to conflict management and peacekeeping, the case of Nagorno-Karabakh, which was also funded by the AGBU, if I'm correctly informed. And so I read this paper, very good paper, and then I said, okay, it ends with 2024. So a lot have happened since then. So what we want to do is 20-25 minutes, a little conversation between us, and then we include everyone here in the room and, of course, the people who are online, which also you can, I guess you can ask questions there as well via the chat. So I would go directly tackle the nexus of the political pragmatism and identity politics based on history, and I would start with this press statement the Office of the Prime Minister of Armenia gave on February 19 this year, called The Ideology of Real Armenia. So compared to this historical part. And I think if we start with that, maybe you can elaborate on this. The ideology of the real Armenia versus the historical Armenia, because I think this is a part, you know, that's a part of policy, but it's also a part of what, from my perspective as an historian, is interesting. What does it do with history and with remembering also the Armenian genocide? So maybe we can start off with that. So,
all right. Historical, probably given the current developments, economic, political, and at the society level and at the national level, and having in mind what is going on in the South Caucasus, also having in mind what is happening in the Middle East and the South Caucasus, because we cannot separate them. Probably during the conversation we'll refer to Syria and Ukraine also, because I mean those conflicts left a negative impact on Russia and on what happened later on in Nagorno-Karabakh. So having all these developments in mind, and after examining the policies of Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Russia, probably pragmatism is necessary rather than certainly the genocide. That is an issue and a topic that definitely we agree on, recognition and whatever, accountability, so on and so forth. But other than that, I mean, being pragmatic is required nowadays, and referring to history always in order to solve the conflicts between Armenia and Azerbaijan and talk about what Armenia has been facing, the challenges, mainly political security, we focus on after a while, is a necessity. So history, you mentioned history, and because, I mean, this conversation is also related to genocide and accountability and what has happened in Nagorno-Karabakh and the challenges of Armenia nowadays. Definitely, it is important that Azerbaijan meets Armenia in the middle of the road. The prospect of peace, I mean, the policy of the authorities in Armenia that has been initiated by the Armenian government. On the other hand, definitely, at the same time, it is very clear that Armenia wants peace, because war is not the solution anymore, and economic development, so on and so forth. But on the other hand, if you look at the other side, the Azerbaijani side, I mean, there is no reciprocation from the Azerbaijani side. So it's important that Azerbaijan meets in the middle of the road with Armenia. And I think this is the most important thing that we should focus on during this conversation. And we relate to it, Nagorno-Karabakh, security of Armenia, which is utmost importance, and it's a policy matter nowadays, because having in mind, again, I mean, having in mind the announcements and from time to time declarations by Aliyev, I mean, that do not at all serve the purpose of peace. And that's why I said a while ago, if one side needs peace and the other side, I mean, is not ready for peace, and there is no reciprocation from the other side, the Azerbaijani side, then peace cannot be established. And this is the core issue that we are facing today, irrespective of the historical context. I mean, definitely that is important, as you said. Also to this topic, I mean, one more thing before I complete my answer. The other issue that is related to talks and negotiations, call them talks, between Armenia and Turkey concerning the opening of the border and normalizing relations between the two countries. This is also a major challenge related to and parallel to what is going on between Armenia and Azerbaijan. So when Turkey says that sign the peace treaty with Armenia and that will serve the opening of the border, the opening of the border will be easier. So we cannot separate both issues from each other. So a number of policy challenges Armenia faces nowadays. The Armenian-Turkish dialogue, opening of the border, security. At the same time, the Armenian-Azerbaijani peace, whether there will be a treaty signing or not. And I mean, as I said a while ago, history. Aliyev has been referring to history a number of times, calling the return of the Western of Azerbaijanis to Western Azerbaijan. I mean, he doubts not only doubts, but he doesn't. Probably that is for manipulation. I don't know, but let's take the announcement as it is. Then if that is true, and if that is the real intention, then genocide could happen again and again, and violence against the Armenian nation could happen again and again. He does not acknowledge, in other words, the existence of independent Armenia. He still goes back to, I mean, claims Lake Sevan, for example, referring to the toponym of that was used during history. That is another example, and the return of Azerbaijanis to Western Azerbaijan. He doubts the existence of Armenia. So given all these, I mean, the question is, in my view, and we would like to listen to the audience also, I mean, how Armenia should approach these challenges, which is directly related to the topic, to the conversation that we were having today.
So, I mean, I picked that up. So my concerns are that's why I mentioned this this press release in February, that it's maybe not such a good idea to divide, let's say, or to say we want to transform the identity of Armenia in there's the real Armenia and there's the historical Armenia. So my question is if this kind of wording maybe at some point supports the Azeri side with this historical revisionism. And the other concern I have is, as an historian, I mean, we know I mean, we live in a world where there is a state, Turkey, which has a state policy of denialism. And so if we use this kind of wordings, it's from the Armenian side. We will get to the Azeri side, of course, as well, also about these constitutional struggles and, I mean, the question of commitment. But I want to stay on the Armenian side right now, or on the political level. If this means a rollback in this long-standing fight for recognition, so I'm not sure if this is you know, I read this press statement, and I was wondering why. I mean, why is this? Why is he using these kind of words? Why doesn't he can use some other things? You know, that's
you mean Aliyev?
No. I mean Pashinyan. I mean, in a way that there is that there is this real Armenia and the historical Armenia, and we have to forget a little bit about this historical Armenia. That's the bottom line, and this is very dangerous, because I think this kind of identity politics, in a way, we had this discussion yesterday evening as well with Thomas, and so this somehow puts puts oil into this revisionist fire from the side of the Azeris. So that is, I mean, is this just a political not clever move he did, or what's the reason behind it? So I want to stay a little bit on the Armenian side before we go to the Azeri side, if it's okay with you. So this is, I hope I made my point or made it clear. So, I accept, you are a political scientist and also a little historian. I'm a historian and a little bit of philosopher. So we have these two professions colliding maybe today. I don't know. But I agree with the policy making, and I agree with pragmatism in a way. Realpolitik, we say in German. That was also just a side note. Also, the similar discussion during Lepsius times. People say, okay, you have to be realpolitisch, political pragmatism. And Lepsius always said, okay, that's of course true, but we also have moral principles. And so that's the dilemma a little bit. So
my answer would be, from a political science perspective, I know very well that the perspective of a historian can be completely different from the perspective of a political scientist. So we can disagree here. But from a political science perspective, in today's world, I believe, from my perspective, redrawing internationally recognized borders are very difficult. So going back to history, Pashinyan's saying historical Armenia, you can interpret it in different ways, right? But I'm trying to analyze it, and that's why I said a while ago, redrawing internationally recognized borders is very difficult. Let me tell you the following. When both Armenia and Azerbaijan in 1991, both of them, when there was the bilateral talks between them on the demarcation of mutual border with a shared unequivocal commitment to the 1991 Almaty Declaration and the respective territorial integrity of Armenia, 29,800 kilometers square, and Azerbaijan, 80,600 kilometers square. Both of them expressed commitment to that declaration, and this commitment effectively meant that Armenia would accept Nagorno-Karabakh as part of Azerbaijan, while Azerbaijan would not claim any territory in Armenia. Now, the problem that we are facing now is that Armenia accepted Nagorno-Karabakh as part of Azerbaijan because it was inside the borders of Azerbaijan. But on the other hand, what about Azerbaijani claims of Armenian territory? Azerbaijan was not committed. And this is what we are facing now. What about Azerbaijani commitment? Acceptance and of the Almaty Declaration, signing, acceptance, call it whatever you want, demarcation of mutual border. The border is being demarcated still, but this is documented. Armenia accepted the international border, internationally recognized border of Azerbaijan. So then how you go back to historical Armenia or whatever? It's finished. Karabakh is lost, and I'm very pragmatic, although I'm not happy with what I'm saying, but this is the reality, this is the truth. War ended, Armenia was defeated, and definitely going back to war is not the alternative. How Pashinyan's announcement could be interpreted differently, I don't know, but accepting the Almaty Declaration is a very important, very All right. So I think we should focus on the Azerbaijani side because the Armenian side wants peace. And again, I said, so far, there is no real reciprocation from a conflict resolution perspective. There is no clear reciprocation from the Azerbaijani side. If this will continue, then I doubt whether Azerbaijan really needs peace or not. I mean, when it does not acknowledge, the existence of Armenia, that going back, let me tell you the following, if you allow. When Azerbaijan talks about when Aliyev talks about Western Azerbaijan, if I was Pashinyan, I would have said that Baku was not Baku did not belong to the Azerbaijanis. Let's go to history then. Okay? All the oil fields, most of the oil fields, not all of them, most of the oil fields in Baku belonged to the Armenians. And at that time, there was no Azeri identity. They were the Tatars. Okay, if we are going to open the page of history, then let's go to history. Then let us see what will be Aliyev's response. Baku did not belong to the Azerbaijanis because at that time there was no Azerbaijan. Baku was cosmopolitan, Armenian, Russian, and whatever. That's history. Shall we go to history?
Okay. Maybe I have to strengthen my point. I do not mean with history in a way that a call to arms in a way. That's not what I meant. What I meant is Armenia is wants peace. I agree with that, but you have to somehow take the people in the Republic of Armenia and in the diaspora with you. And I think it's not good to use this kind of distinction because there's a danger that you somehow create let's say a bubble in a way that is going on for itself, you know. That's what I mean. Of course, Aliyev would answer if you for the case of Baku, he would answer with historical revisionism, and that's what I mean. So if you want to do a good policy and you want to try to do this, you also have to include the identity, the emotions in a way, and that's part of history. That's what I mean. Not in a way that you should go into the next war. But okay, let's switch the sides. So I mean, we all know this. Let's say the least interesting meeting in the White House. I think everyone saw this. And what comes next? So I think, I mean, what we can agree is that I think we don't have to talk about the Minsk group because this is done now. I think the Europeans are a little bit sad about it, but it is what it is. And there are two more points in this, let's say, agreement or in this aspect. So one is the struggle over the Armenian constitution. So, I mean, this is also a dilemma. This is how, I mean, for me, from my perspective, it means it's like it doesn't matter what you do, the advantage is always on the Azeri side in a way. So what are the options? What are the actions on a political level in this way?
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, you are raising a very important question. Let me start. Okay, Let me start with the following. We are the loser side. Azerbaijan is the victorious side. All right. Certainly the victorious side will impose, in any conflict, by the way, the victorious side will impose the conditions. One of the conditions, so far, Aliyev is not refraining from mentioning it again and again and again. So one of the conditions is that in order to sign the peace treaty with Armenia, Armenia should change its constitution, or some of the provisions in the Armenian constitution should be revised, so that no territorial claim, no reference to a territorial claim exists anymore in the Armenian constitution. This is a dangerous issue. Okay? Before I continue, just to add on what I said when I referred to the loser side and the victorious side, in negotiations, and Armenia should understand this very well. The Armenian government should understand this very well. If the Armenian government lacks diplomatic potential, it should consult specialists. There is no shame in that. During negotiations, when you, as the loser side, when you render concessions to the victorious side, the victorious side will not be satisfied and it will ask for more concessions. And this is an ongoing process. It will not stop. And the Armenia's government should know this very well. If tomorrow morning, let's say, Armenia's constitution is revised, who said that Azerbaijan will stop asking for another thing? This should not happen, in my view. That was one of the conditions. All right? This is not, it's very difficult to comprehend what Azerbaijan has been asking for. And that's why I said a while ago, the intention of Azerbaijan is not peace, but sorry to put it in very, to put it in a very, transparent way, probably because there is no intention from the Azerbaijan, probably Azerbaijan wants to destroy the Armenian nation. And create a problem between, already there is a problem between the diaspora and the homeland, right? And probably Azerbaijan wants to ignite, fire by adding to that misunderstanding and problem. So revising the constitution, in my view, is a very dangerous issue, okay? And Armenia should be very careful. I am not in a position to tell the Armenian authorities what to do. That's not my job. But I have told you a while ago that when you render concessions one after the other, because you are the loser side, then the victorious side will ask for more concessions, and who knows where we will be heading with rendering one concession after the other. That's the conception that I want to emphasize. It's a matter of Armenia what to do with the constitution later on. We discuss it. But not, submit to the wishes of Azerbaijan without having a say on the negotiations table. That's why a while ago I said reciprocation a while ago. Azerbaijan so far did not reciprocate to any of the moves of the Armenian government, any of the moves. On the contrary, it has been more demanding and unacknowledging the current situation, because from a victorious position, who knows what would be the next condition, Azerbaijani condition for Armenia. That's my answer.
Yeah, let's say I will go with a realpolitik on this point and say, okay, I agree with what you said, but on the other hand, I mean, even if there is no majority for the referendum, if there is anyone, so then it can be, then it's proved from the Azeri side, they would say, that Armenia doesn't want any peace. So, I mean, the main issue, so that's the dilemma. Both sides, both options are not good. And the question remains how to get behind these kind of things which were talked about at the White House, because my impression is that, of course, there are groups in Armenia, and also in the diaspora, which are representing the violently expulsed Armenians, and they continue to argue that they should return to their homes. But my impression is that on a political level, these negotiations are not on the agenda anymore, also from the Armenian side. So the question is how to pressure.
What happened you mean what happened in Washington is not on the agenda?
No, it's not. My impression was what happens in Washington is that from the Armenian side, the negotiations that the Artsakh people can return in any way is not on the agenda anymore. So the dilemma in this case, it's a dilemma. It's they cannot return, and maybe they fight for it or they decline that. As you said, or they say they do a referendum with, I don't know, which probably, if I see the polls right now in Armenia, would not be successful. And that means that the Azeri side can say, okay, you did this, and you are not ready for peace. So either way, it doesn't work. And the question is how to, I don't know, political pressure the other side or both sides in a way that this kind of negotiation is on the agenda there again. So my question is more like, how do you see the Azeri side? I mean, of course, we know, we talked about West Azerbaijan, and I see that too, this bellicose rhetoric, if you so will. The question is if this is something which is also a political, let's say, a political pressure point, which can be somehow could be rolled back in a way. So, not to, of course, I don't say that there's no real threat. There is a real threat. No arguing that. But that's a dilemma, and I don't see how we can solve that. Actually, I don't know. That's also sorry that I don't have the answers for that, but this is something which makes me wake up at night in a way, you know? Yeah.
All right.
I know that the hard questions are for you.
The Armenian side or Armenians in general may not like my answer to your question. Mr. Aliyev has been saying that the Karabakh Armenians are welcome to return, but they return as Azeri citizens. So would you return as an Armenian? This is what Aliyev has been saying, and he said it more than once. They are welcome to return, but they return as Azeri citizens, and they live under what? Under the laws of Azerbaijan. Probably because he knows very well that no Armenian would like to return at the same time being Azeri citizen. There's a question mark. And whether, okay, it has been discussed during negotiations, the return of the Karabakh Armenians to Nagorno-Karabakh. But I myself, I doubt whether this will happen or not. I doubt it. Because I have in mind what happened in Yugoslavia during the the Yugoslavia conflict, and when Serbs and Muslims butchered each other in the villages, and then when there was reconstruction by the international community, and how billions of dollars were spent in those villages on electricity, water, so on and so forth, so that the inhabitants of those villages would return. Nobody returned. Or a very small number returned because there was no trust between those peoples. This is a matter of, the return is a matter of trust. What happened in Yugoslavia is very clear. What will happen in Karabakh, again, is the same. I mean, when there was violence committed against the Armenians and exodus of 120,000 Armenians from Karabakh, forced displacement, which is genocide, definitely. Because before the exodus, there was the blockade and the starvation. That was also genocide. So how you return? When the perpetrator was trying to destroy you, and you were forced to what? To leave Karabakh, and then how you return afterwards, in light of what Mr. Aliyev has been repeating on and on and on, as I said a while ago, claiming Armenian territory, Western Azerbaijan, so on and so forth. I doubt the return. I doubt. So it could be on the agenda again. It is discussed, by the way, but I doubt it.
Yeah, I mean, plus the still ongoing destruction of Armenian cultural heritage. I mean, this is okay. Before we open up, just because we talked about Armenia, Azerbaijan, let's put in Russia, Turkey, and also, because I'm from Germany, the European Union, even it's a sad story. The positive story is that I was wondering, and I think the plan discussed in Washington, there was this one, and I quote, that the parties, they said that the parties shall not deploy along the mutual border forces of any third party. At the same time, the European Union said, okay, we want to do this monitoring mission for, I think, until 2029, something like that. So my question on this part is, I don't know if the EU is just simple-minded or slow-minded, or if there is something behind these kind of missions, because it does not consent with this policy of not having third parties at the border. And the second question is the role of Turkey in this way. I mean, the Russian role, I think we know, but we can also elaborate on that as well. And then we will open the discussion.
Pashinyan was clear when he said the European mission, we will ask the European observers to return, to leave, after we sign the peace treaty with Azerbaijan, which means the European observers will stay, and they are there, because so far nothing is done. There is no peace agreement. It's not signed. And who knows? It may be signed, it may not be signed, we don't know. I may follow, but what happened a few days ago between the European Union and Armenia, Armenia is certainly now diversifying its foreign policy, and definitely Pashinyan, I mean, during the Karabakh War, when the Russians did not respond to Armenian pleas to intervene to protect the people of Karabakh, Armenians, Pashinyan said, it was a strategic mistake to rely only on the Russians. And from that point onwards, definitely he opened to diversification took place. European Union, the observers were invited, then the military exercises with the Americans in Armenia. I think it was called Eagle Force, something like that. Yes. And then the trip, the Trump route. Okay. Now, the Russians definitely are not happy with all these developments, but the Russians are preoccupied with Ukraine. And at the same time, Armenian authorities are making it very clear that we maintain the relations with the Russians, but we need to diversify, not keep it only with Russians. This is what is happening currently in relation to Armenia's diversification policy. European Union, we are reading about the visa procedures, so on and so forth. Let's see, a strategic document has been signed, I think, a few days ago with the European Union. So Armenia is transparent and would like to continue diversification. In relation to Turkey, you said, in relation to Turkey, the talks between the Armenian and Turkish delegations continue concerning the opening of the border. That is organically related to the peace agreement between Armenia and Azerbaijan. So it's a wait and see situation. I think we cannot reach a final conclusion and say that the following will happen in the coming months.
Just a quick another question. Do you think there could be also, let's say, some kind of rivalry between Turkey and Azerbaijan in a way of being let's say, the player in the South Caucasus?
I don't think so. Erdogan has been emphasizing many times that they are brothers. And by the way, the Azerbaijanis are the Azeri Turks originally.
Okay.
They are the Azeri Turks. Let's make it very clear. So the Turk with the Turk, I don't think that there will be a rivalry. Policy differences could happen, but
two megalomaniacs, at some point. But okay, that's maybe just wishful thinking. Okay.
I'm done.
Okay. So, okay, guys, then I would say we open up because it's called conversation. So the idea is that you also, Irene, you too, contribute if you like to, or ask questions related to this matters. To also must emphasize also this responsibility and commitment. Samia, please. Yes, I think so. Yeah.
Thank you very much for this depressing talk. You said at the beginning we should go to pragmatism. Now, you go to pragmatism is that you abandon what is right to what works. In such a formula, if we are the losers, what are we going to get out of being practical? Are we going to submit without any, since the strong will apply their power, we will have to give in to whatever negotiation terms are. So couldn't there be more, maybe, possibility of returning to what is right rather than what works, and advocate for the right principles that would be historically correct, politically maybe more dignified for the Armenians, than to sign a peace treaty where we are always losing? There is nothing to gain out of it. We still have political prisoners there. We still have territorial claims there. So what is the advantage? What is it that Pashinyan has to offer in return for this peace treaty? And
That's why I said, if Azerbaijan did not reciprocate, the Armenian government should stop rendering concessions. Khalas. That's it. Then on the negotiations table, you raised a very important point. The political prisoners. Where is the intention to make peace? If really there is a commitment to make peace, first of all, those political prisoners should be released rather than they have received life sentences and 16-year and some of them life sentences. So it is very clear that Azerbaijan doesn't want peace. And there is no intention to open a new page. All right, you raised you put your finger on the wound. The Armenian side on the negotiations table should stop rendering concessions. That's it. Even if you are the loser, you need to tell Azerbaijan, khalas, this is enough. Now you reciprocate and let me see what can I render. It depends on the negotiations. Otherwise, it is an endless story. Losing, losing, losing all the way. Sorry, this is probably, I don't know, this is probably we can compare it to what has been happening here now. Yes, we can compare it. Now the Lebanese side on the negotiations table hopefully would say, khalas, stop. Concessions one after the other, reciprocate. And reciprocation is a tactic in negotiations that should be used. Definitely. Thank you.
So we have first the question from the chat, if it's okay. Yeah. So what do we read here? Thank you, Dr. Geukjian. Don't you think the great powers such as the UK, USA are not paying enough pressure on the other side to solve this issue in a fair and peaceful way? They did in other similar controversial issues. I think the other side is the Azeri side, I guess. Yeah.
All right. I think the US pressure did work when both sides were invited to the White House and they shook hands. And Trump told the Russians, you were not able to achieve peace for 30 years. I achieved it in 15 minutes between Armenia and Azerbaijan. You are raising a very important point. What interests the American side is economics and trade and oil and not history. Thank you.
So they're interested in what works and not what is right.
Ricor Manoukian. Myself, I would look at matters more aggressively and down to earth. Unfortunately, nowadays, Unfortunately, we, the Armenians, throughout history, we have always been very emotional in our decision-taking, in our relations with our neighbors, even with the wars. Thank you. Apologies. Even while going in war with our enemies. The best examples for those are that we have been always losing. That has been the outcome of our attitude. And one example is, I'm sure everybody knows, the Vartanants, that we always claim that we have been the winners emotionally or historically or this and that. Another repercussion, the fact of how we approach was religion. We have been always led by religion. We have never been pragmatic in our wars, etc. Coming to the contemporary history, we still don't have diplomacy in our relation. And here I'm not in a situation to praise anybody, but I cannot deny that the first diplomatic person, the first pragmatic person, and don't take it personally, please, is Nicole Pashinyan. He is looking at matters, and he is tackling the issues very pragmatically, because in modern history there are two basic things: survival of the fittest and interests. That's it. Cut. No history, no emotional approaches, no blah 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 blah. Not even treaties, not even POWs. They don't give a, you know what goes on. They have a line of interest and they have to implement it by hook or by crook. The most recent example was the very near Middle East. Gaza is the most unhuman result of it. And we still cry, we mourn with this, with that, and we still shout on the stages, whereas the survival of the fittest is going on, the interests are going on. As we go back to Armenia, we have to go high in the plane for about 15,000 feet, even 35,000 feet. Look at things from there, because as much as we go down, we will be busy with the crumbles of the bread. We have to see the bread, the loaf. We are here busy with this made this promise, this made this promise. This POW has been suffering. He is ill. They gave him 16 years of, these are peanuts. The main issue is energy treaties. We have lost thousands of youngsters just because we have not been pragmatic. Now, I'm sure, but this is a guess, Nicole Pashinyan he wouldn't agree on sacrificing those. But we, the Armenians, wanted to fight. We have to liberate our country. Nowadays, there isn't anything liberating the country. There are two interests, two poles, Putin and the big guy, the imposing guy. That's it. Even Putin is not nowadays, he's not on the upper hand situation. And that's where Trump comes in. He wants to redraw the map of the Middle East. As simple as that. We deny it, we don't accept it, we complain, we weep, we cry. Those are details. This is my close approach. Then, the new perspective is oil, land, interests, towers. There isn't anything, oh, I promised you that, oh, you deserve that. These are very human. Call it as you, but there is no place for that. The only example, the biggest example was when we were losing the war of Armenia against Artsakh, starting with Vatican, starting with the UK, starting this and that. Nobody even looked at our side, simply because the winter was at their door and they wanted oil. Otherwise, they would have been frozen. And in UK, in those period, the percentage of increasing the British electricity, even the communication and oil boosted up about 30 to 60%. People went crazy. They were not busy with Armenia churches. What the heck? What the heck? In which bank they can negotiate on churches, walls, khachkars, or whatever? Even there, they take it, confiscate it. They don't give it. Anyhow, to go back to our sheep, in history, we have been always losers because our approach of politics is different. But nowadays, it's not politics anymore. We are talking about, it's not politics. If you go politics to the back to the Greek period, yes. To the European, yes, because they used to give brides to take this. Now, he is the cousin, he is my cousin. Belgium has been our cousins, we cannot attack them. No, there is nothing like that. Nowadays, the whole page is turned. Even the book has been folded back. It has become aggressive interest, the survival of the fittest. I think I gave my point of view. And what goes back to Europe is giving us the privilege of going to Europe free and the other facilities. I would look at it as ethnic cleansing because the US, Canada, Germany, they have given under the name of human approach, they have given facilities to the Syrians, to refugees, to go, although they have regretted, into parentheses, they have regretted, and they are forcing them back now. But the thing was to have ethnic cleansing from Armenia. Very simple, slow cleansing, not like Gaza. The slow, low-profile cleansing, so that Azerbaijan will have the upper hand. Artsakh is nothing in front of the passageway named Trump Passageway. That's it. They wanted the pipeline to go through very freely. And I don't know if anybody remembers, Dick Cheney then sacrificed hundreds of, I don't know which country, simply because he wanted the pipe to go straight, and he sacrificed the cities all around the planned line, because otherwise he would have spent millions of dollars more. Very simple. Thank you. Thanks to everybody. And apologize for my aggressive approach.
I just want to have one comment. I mean, that's also a very depressing picture. But of course, I mean, this is the world we live in, but that does not mean we cannot somehow find alternatives. And I want to pick out one point about the oil and mainly the gas in Azerbaijan. I mean, 3 years ago, I mean, I was at a conference in Warsaw. It was about the destruction of cultural heritage, and it was the day where Ursula von der Leyen said to Aliyev, "Yeah, you're a good friend of Europe," and so on. But if you look at the numbers, it was not a necessity to do this, because I mean, if you look at the numbers right now for oil or gas from Azerbaijan, it's not that Europe could not live without it. The question is if there was a political will to do that, and not a laziness in a way. And that's what I meant with a let's say what is right and what works. So there are possibilities, and But it's a laziness in Europe, and I think. And in Europe, it's always this, yeah, of course, if we don't do this, then maybe Bulgaria and Greece, for example, they don't have it, so we have to care about them. So, and this is, where does this stop? This kind of, let's say, selfish thinking in a way. So that's just a small comment on that. Not oppose that, but just saying there are political actions possible if there is a political will in a different way, especially on that point. We are not dependent in Europe on Azeri gas or oil. We are not. If you don't want to do that, you can find alternatives. That's just maybe a little bit of hope, even if that's not the EU policy. But I'm not a EU politician, so. Points you've noted.
Yeah, some points. I already mentioned pragmatism in my conversation with Roy, but at the same time, let us be very clear. Pragmatism, okay, is important, but not at the expense of the national interests of Armenia. So the national interests of Armenia should be preserved and protected, and the government of Armenia knows better than us what are the national interests of the country at this very critical moment. That's one thing. The other thing about peace, let me emphasize that imposed peace on the loser side will not work. We have many examples. And imposed peace is not sustainable. What we need and we want, sustainable peace. And sustainable peace can be achieved by maintaining and protecting the mutual interests of each side, the mutual interests of both parties. Otherwise, talks could continue on the negotiations table, but without reaching actually a conclusion. The other issue, one more thing, we need to acknowledge the importance of geopolitics. You mentioned it in other ways, but I got it. The geopolitical situation and geopolitics of the region, the whole region has been changing, and I said a while ago the Middle East cannot be separated from the South Caucasus. Had there been no Syrian crisis and Russian intervention in Syria in 2015, and had there been no Ukraine conflict and Russian annexation of the Crimea in 2014, the situation in the South Caucasus and Karabakh could have been different now. This is the importance of geopolitics. We could have not lost Karabakh had there been no Syria conflict and had there been no Ukraine conflict. And certainly Russia submitted to lost influence, yes, in the South Caucasus, and it was very humiliating for the Russian peacekeeping force when it withdrew from the South Caucasus without any attempt to protect the Armenian population. It was only bystanders. That was humiliating for Russia. But it did it because it needed Turkey, it needed Azerbaijan, because with Turkey in Syria, at that time, they were fighting international terrorism, so on and so forth, without going to details. I wrote a book about this. And in the Ukraine, the Russian forces were losing at that time territory. So there was no other way but to submit to Turkish and Azeri wishes. At the same time, Russia, during the 29 years of negotiations, has used a balanced approach between territorial integrity and self-determination. Unfortunately, the Armenian side did not understand it. And that's why we lost Karabakh. No time Russia said Karabakh belonged to the Armenians. No time. No time. We did not understand, we did not get it. And we paid a very high price. The second point, again, geopolitics, agree with you. There are probably, I don't want to accuse a side, but if the Armenian negotiators on the negotiating table were unaware of the Russian military doctrines, the Russian foreign policy concepts, and they were negotiating without being aware of what was really Russian policy in the region and the South Caucasus in particular, that was very sad. And that was another reason why we lost. Where in the 2016 Russian foreign policy concept, Karabakh was mentioned in a separate paragraph, but later on it was not mentioned at all. So that's why I said what I said a while ago. The negotiators on the were aware of it. I said this during the conference in New York last year. And this is what I mentioned in my article, that Russian foreign policy concepts should have been read carefully by the Armenian side, by the Armenian negotiators. I don't know, I mean, whether they were aware of it or not, but we paid a very high price because of geopolitics. That's it. Thank you.
Well, I've been thinking about Azerbaijan and Israel. Now, Azerbaijan keeps on sort of pressurizing. So do you think Israel is behind Azerbaijan because it wants a safe, fighting Iran indirectly?
You raised an important point. Again, related to it. By the way, Azerbaijan has been buying Israeli weaponry for a long time, billions of dollars. So, and Turkish drones and Israeli actually drones. So, economic interests dominated more than actually political interest or whatever. There was a convergence between political and economic. Yes, Iran, was not happy with what Azerbaijan has been doing because the Israelis were spying on Iran from Azerbaijan, and this, what you said, is correct. But what happened had happened. What happened had happened. I mean, do you see? Thank you.
Excuse me, may I, sorry, anybody? May I add a paragraph? Again, when you go up in the plane, we have to watch why Putin has not interfered, not even in Syria. Not even in Syria, if he mentioned something that's not to be taken into consideration. Not even in Armenia. He just turned his face simply because he is getting remunerated on the West to have part of Ukraine for sure, which even Zelensky admitted and confessed that he is ready to sacrifice some of Ukraine. That this was when he had the second, not the first, not the intimidating meeting, the second meeting that he had with Trump. He indirectly mentioned that I want to have peace, even if I have to sacrifice, not military soldiers, to sacrifice land, one. And my very humble reading of geopolitics in the area, another part of the remuneration would be Moldova, Latvia, and part of Poland. Very soon. Those will start soon. And the indication for those were the pulse testing of Russia by sending drones over Germany on the bases, military bases of Germany, not the landscape, not the farms. Many of them all over Europe and at low heights, we're not talking about the things up there. Plus, on top of that, the submarines that went to the sea of, I don't know, I can't remember the country now, Iceland, no, not Iceland, maybe, yes. All the way, and Europe continued complaining. That was kind of the remuneration for Russia. Plus, Russia didn't interfere in the Middle East at all, not a word. What the heck?
Okay,
Thank you.
we are coming. Okay, I mean, if that's the scenario which will happen, you mentioned, then I just can say good luck, Russia. But about Poland and so on. But anyway, so Thomas, I think this was.
Yeah, no, I want to ask, I guess, kind of a question. It's very much related to everything that we've been saying vis-a-vis like broadening geopolitics. I'm curious if you have thoughts on like, well, what other levers can Armenia pull, or what other strategic relationships can it build? What I mean is, or where I would kind of think, of course, I'm American, but I'm also struck that as much as we talk about being pragmatic, I mean, I hope this is being recorded and will ruin my career forever, but you know, I'm always reminded of Althusser's definition of ideology. This is man's imaginary relationship to his real existence, right? I mean, America believes ideologically, right, that it must sustain Israel, you know, and it must be involved in wars in the Middle East that has spent trillions of dollars, not, I would venture, in America's best interest. So there is a way that the goal for Armenians is always to convince people that there is an interest in Armenia, and also to perhaps understand, to me, the most pragmatic approach would be to understand that there is both ideology operating, but even the idea of realpolitik is an ideology, right? Like that may or may not actually benefit a country. So my question was just, especially, how do you see Armenia potentially building more multilateral relationships with the Gulf, with the Levant and Arab states here? Do you see any other possibilities for Armenia to kind of develop these relationships? And again, this is I think the left hand and the right hand can operate differently or in different registers. You know, I'm struck, for instance, and this was so underreported, that Azerbaijan invested in building relationships to sell resources in Artsakh even before it had acquired the territory, and strategically cultivated partners like Ottoman Mining Limited, right, incorporated in London, but had American politicians like Arab American John Sununu on its board. So my question would just be, what other strategic partnerships do you think that Armenia can build, knowing that they have to look different, that I think, than what Armenians both in the country, you know, Hayastansis and diaspora imagine as being good partners? Thanks.
Yes, I mean, that's why a while ago I mentioned diversification of foreign policy.
Yeah.
Perfect. That's very good. Yes, Armenia is trying to extend its relations with the Gulf countries. There were a number of visits, probably to have leverage. But the US position is very important. European Union, definitely there is a lot of effort being done with the EU so that Armenia would have more leverage, let's say, on the negotiations table. But at the end of the day, you need the American support. There's no other way. I mean, this world is still, although there is a multipolarity taking shape, and that will happen probably later on, but still there is the hegemony of the United States. Look at what what's happening in Ukraine. I mean, President Trump is dictating on Zelensky that you should surrender territory if you want peace. So the American position is important. I was in Washington doing research in Library of Congress during the semester, and I met a number of diaspora leaders, activists in Washington, and there was, I mean, a frank talk between me and them. And what they told me, I'm sharing this for the first time, by the way, with you. And what they told me is that the administration is not listening to them. Is not. No administration probably in the United States had done what, I mean, this administration is doing. Not listening. Not listening, although there is a lot of activism in Washington to support Armenia, I mean, Artsakh, the right to return to the territory, whatever, but there is passivity. So that's why I said Armenia needs the American support. There's no other way. If it wants to exercise leverage on the negotiations table. You raised a very important point, by the way. Thank you very much. I don't know if Roy has another interpretation.
Excuse me.
Please.
Thank you for the lecture. And I can see a great similarity between Armenia. Lower the mic. Thank you. Okay. Thank you for the lecture. You gave us a lot of information. I can see a great different similarity between this case and the Palestinians with Israel and Israel with the Lebanese. They have signed the peace, not peace agreement as we say, but stop fighting. And even though they couldn't abide by the laws, they attack Lebanon and Gaza whenever they want. So this is not also important. They have to do something in order to abide by the law. It's not only the signing the assignment. As you said that they have to change the constitution in order to build a new relation. But by doing this, a lot of people will feel frustrated because they will lose a lot. And as the lady said, what's the advantages of gaining after signing this agreement? A lot of people will feel frustrated and they won't be satisfied. And even if they have to change the constitution, they have to abide or to appoint new consultants. And how do you know that these consultants are not prejudiced? Now, everything, they are ruled by the great authorities in the world. As we see, America is doing it behind the table and above the table, and it ignores, and no one is signing. For example, 2 years have been fighting and nothing happened. So it's not also important in assigning the treatment also to abide, and no one is following this issue. This is the important thing. I don't know, in my opinion.
No, not, I don't have a solution. But I share, or what I hear is the one thing that we somehow witness a change in geopolitics that international law is not
Being violated.
is being violated, and but even worse, it's not. It's going, or it's decreasing to be the fundamentals of policymaking. So that's the first thing. But this also, I mean, you mentioned Azerbaijan, Israel, but of course you also can mention the US as well. I mean, look what's going on in Venezuela. But the second point is if this is somehow undermined, then of course it's hard to. And I have here written down the word you mentioned, trust, and I underlined it. I mean, and you said there were no, they didn't sign anything, and that's true. And so I don't know what should we, is there a waiting period so that there's some kind of political realization which takes care by the survival of the fittest or whatever? So I don't know. I mean, if you look into history, so at this point, if you look at the Armenian reform plans, for example, in the 1910s, so 1910, 1911, so this was an effort, actually. This was an effort, and I'm sure if the Balkan Wars would not have happened, then there would be a strong force in Europe who could maybe pressure the Ottoman Empire at this point. But then, of course, the Balkan Wars happened. So it's this kind of. You also mentioned what's going to happen, you know.
It's politics. The answer is
yes, but politics. But
It's-
that is. But what's the fundamental? You know, it's like. Do we have these kind of also moral principles or not? Or and it's not a, you know, it's not converging anymore in a way, and that's not good.
what has happened, and probably you share my view, I don't know. You know what is the most dangerous thing that has happening in this world? International principles are losing significance. One of them, as you have just mentioned, where is the responsibility to protect? Where is it? I mean, completely evaporated. This is an international principle that when a minority is subordinated or exterminated or whatever, the international community intervenes in order to protect that minority. Responsibility to protect principle has lost significance. The same with international law that you mentioned a while ago. It has lost significance. And I think the great powers are the primary responsible actors, and they are the primary actors who have been causing harm to international law and international principles. This is what is happening. The rest is detail. I mean, had there been, for example, responsibility to protect, the Russian peacekeeping force should have protected the Karabakh Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh when they were there. That's why they were deployed, by the way. That's why they were deployed. They did not. I mean, the same has been happening everywhere. So this is the most dangerous thing that we are facing in this world. International principles are losing significance.
Could you?
This has always been on my mind whenever I follow politics and so on. Mahatma Gandhi, around 60 years ago, mentioned the 7 sins, and I'd like to mention one of the sins, politics without principles. He said this is one of the 7 sins. So every time I follow something, I recall what he has said. Politics without principles. So this has been going on for decades and decades and decades, and still it's running.
A while ago, I said politics. Yes, but politics, yes, the answer is politics. And the politics is art of the possible. You can do nothing else, which is the art of the possible. And the other thing, very, very shortly, I mean, again, who gets what, when, and how? Leverage. Something that you mentioned. That's it. It's politics. Either you play it in the right way or you are loser.
Okay, I think one last question there, and then maybe just a question into the chat, if there is any. Yeah, so the few viewers, just if you like, participate, but please.
Thank you for the talk, Hagop Sulayan. I had two questions. The first one was that, was it ever possible in any way to avert what happened to Karabakh, or did everybody from the beginning knew what was coming? But I think Dr. Geukjian already partly answered that question. So I'll go back to my second question, and it is, we mentioned a lot about the neighboring countries, but I didn't see Iran coming much into the picture, although it has common borders with Armenia and with Azerbaijan, and it has also a big Azeri population, and we know the interests of those, and it's been giving mixed signals, Iran, regarding what is happening around her. And also, I would like to see also the other neighbor of Armenia, which is Georgia, which has also had its fair share of issues with the Russians and so forth. Can any of you elaborate on these two neighbors and where do they stand in this conflict? Thank you.
Shortly, if it is in the national interest of Iran to, I mean, Iran currently in this position, I think it's in a very difficult position. But if it is there is cooperation and coordination between Iran and Armenia. There is. The question is to what extent, yes, Iran could exercise leverage. That is the question. But you already mentioned that Iran has a very big Azeri population. By the way, the leader is Azeri himself. Khamenei is Azeri in origin. So we don't know. I don't have an answer. It's related to the national interests, and also it's related to geopolitics. Definitely, Iran has to make policy in order to fulfill its national interests. If Armenia is part of it, then it could be. If not, because every state, in principle, makes policy in order to fulfill its national interests. Very simple.
What about Georgia?
There is, again, there is mutual visits between Georgian and Armenian actually representatives. But again, I mean, don't expect that Georgia would stand with you. We have, again, I mean, I don't like to go back to history, but in 1918, Georgia didn't stand with you. I mean, what do you expect from Georgia to do now? Georgia has its own internal problems. There is a big segment of the Georgian population that like to advocating to join the European Union. On the other hand, there is a government that is, if I'm not mistaken, pro-Russian, and it does not want. So Georgia has its own problems. Therefore, let us not expect the unexpectable from Georgia and Iran. They have their own problems. We have our own problems, Armenia. And I think let's be realistic and pragmatic and negotiate accordingly and see what happens.
how would you evaluate what happened very recently, the shipment of oil that came, Azeri oil that came through Georgia, and the Georgians did not levy any charges for the transit, and which has arrived to Armenia? Does this constitute a minor step of maybe showing goodwill on the part of the Azeris?
May I? But that is related also to the trip. I mean that that they signed in Washington, and for the first time, Azerbaijan, before the oil, for the first time, Azerbaijan allowed a shipment of wheat to be carried through the railway from the Azerbaijani border to Armenia, which is a good gesture. The oil, similarly, is a good gesture. This is related to opening the transportation routes and economic relationships, which coincides and is related with the trip and is related with the prospect of peace that is on the agenda of the Pashinyan government. Yes, otherwise, I mean, how you explain it?
If there are no other, okay, I think we can finish the chat. Anyone wants to ask some questions? Okay, I don't think so. Yeah, then I would say, I mean, I imagined that this would be a depressing talk. So I think it's okay. Because we talked anyway, and it's so I don't know, maybe 1 year, 2 years from now, hopefully there's some other change, I don't know. But I'm still standing with this, let's say, sentence that, you know, we have the principles, but we have to put them in action too. So it's not that the things are lost in a way, hopefully. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, Rea wants to.
I just wanted to say thank you. I just wanted to say thank you to everyone online and in person for attending. I want to invite Mrs. Mirey Khanamirian and Mrs. Talim Bashian, members of the AGBU Lebanon District Committee, to present Dr. Ohannes and Dr. Roy with tokens of appreciation. Thank you again.